And so could you, Mr. Kaneko, tell us a little bit more about the bonding process and what we're doing and so on and so forth?
As the Mayor stated, this is one of the various funding sources that we had in our arsenal for the purchase of the Fish Creek project. This was one of 9 or 10 different, if you would, pots of money that staff was pursuing along with our partners. The Governor Dayton has put together a new request submittal for state bonding dollars. There's a request form that has to be filled out, and included with that we've got to get a resolution of support from the council as well, and that'll be submitted back to the state, and that'll become part of their request that the governor will rule on next January if they decide to go ahead with a bonding bill for 2012. The request that we have in front of you, Council, is for $600,000, and as the Mayor stated, that money would be used to bridge the gap between the money that we already have secured, which is a little over $1.1 million, and the total project costs, which are set to be right around $2.1 million. And this would help bridge that gap. We got another, as Council is aware of as well, it looks pretty good for a grant that we submitted to the DNR. We hope to hear on that within the coming weeks. And once we receive that, we're going to pull 3M back into the equation too, and they did express an interest to sort of re-engage that process when we hit that 1.6 mark. So we're doing pretty good on that as well. We've also submitted a request in for $300,000 through one of our partners, Great River Greening. That money would be used to begin some of the restoration work out on the site. And as you recall, Council, as part of that contract, again, at no expense to the city, the Conservation Fund will allow the city to, once we take ownership of that property, which is set to occur on October 11th, staff will be able to go out and begin the restoration work. And there are some areas that we need to focus on real quickly with to stabilize those banks in and around Fish Creek. So the contract that you ratified here at the last council meeting does contain a provision that will allow staff to do that. So staff is actually jumping ahead and beginning to explore the master plan, and part of that is securing money for restoration work, and we'll be working with our partners on that as well. XL has also expressed an interest in helping us with regard to the restoration work. But the request in front of you, is it 4.5 minutes or 4? The request in front of you is for $600,000, and as I stated, a resolution is required, which in essence is a letter of support from the council, and that'll be forwarded along with the application to the state. And I know there are a number of other bonding projects that are there as well, and this will be coupled with the many requests that they get. And we'll hear sometime in January whether or not we made the first cut or not. So, so with that, Mayor and Council, I'll turn it back to you and be available for questions.
Ms. Juneman.
Actually, it's not a question. It's a comment on the last sentence in our report about working with or having assistance from our legislators. And I have to say, if they can do half as good a job on this as they did on the fire training facility, hanging in there and gathering troops from among their ranks, that'll be very, very, very helpful. So, well, I thank them for that, but they're not off the hook yet. They got to keep working on our behalf.
And Mayor, Council, as most of you are aware of, and I know Mayor Rosbach is as well, both Representative Slawick and Lilly have been very supportive, along with Senator Uyghur in this effort as well. And on the House side, both Representative Slawick and Lilly authored the last bond request, and then on the Senate side, Uyghur took it from there and authored that bill on the Senate side as well. So we do have their support. Obviously, we're competing with a number of different interests. The city does have some bonding applications in front of this one as well. But we're going to do our best to see to it that the state at least allocates some resources to help us bridge that gap.
And it seems like it would be a good time. I was going to comment along the lines, Ms. Juneman, and I've been looking for kind of an opportunity in that I had written a letter in the Maplewood Monthly a couple months back where I was at least somewhat critical of the legislature as a whole and the fact that out of the process we ended up with a state shutdown. And I wouldn't retract any of that, but I did want to make sure that people were aware that the legislators that we have representing our city, which you've mentioned, Mr. Kaneko, Representative Slawig and Lilly, and then Senator Uyghur, that no one can fault them in any way for the great job that they actually do as far as being able to find funding for various projects in the Maplewood, North St. Paul, Oakdale area. And so you really can't travel anywhere within the three cities where you can't see a project that they were involved with and help secure funding. And so we certainly do hope that they continue with the great track record they have along that line. Mr. Antonin?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder, too, as we're talking on Fish Creek, that still part of the plan and basically our fallback position if we do run short of funds is that we are still actively looking at pursuing the development of those 20 acres that are not part of the Fish Creek area but adjacent to it for perhaps some type of residential housing development. And so I guess that's important to keep in the back of our mind that development is still a possibility and certainly is very important in fact that it would be a fallback so that the city does not have to allocate general tax dollars as such for Fish Creek.
All right. So,
G2, resolution authorizing submission request for state bonding funds for the purchase of Fish Creek.
so Ms. Juniman has made a motion. Mr. Nephew has seconded it to approve the resolution for the bonding request. Seems to be a pronunciation difficulty in this section of the. You had Fish Creek, and so anyway, this bonding request. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's ayes all. So, the next thing that we have on our agenda is a public hearing, and typically at a public hearing, the city clerk plays a pivotal role in that there are numerous people that come up to speak, and they have to keep track of all that. And so this is an excellent time to make sure that we get the camera on Deb Schmidt, who is our deputy clerk. Ms. Guilfoyle has done a lot recently, what with the election, the recount that we had, and then the Taste of Maplewood. And so filling in tonight is Deb Schmidt. And so this is, you get now at least 15 minutes to just tell us a little bit about what you do for the city.
Mayor, Council, boy, that's awfully loud. You know, I am Mrs. Guilfoyle's right hand. You know, whatever she needs, I'm there to help her. And we do a lot with the election. We just had the Taste of Maplewood, which was a lot of work to put that on. And recently I've taken over transcribing the minutes, so I apologize for any errors. I was happy today to see that there were none, in my part at least.
Yeah,
So.
you want to throw somebody else under the bus for
Oh
the
no,
other part?
oh no, oh no, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, all right.
14 and a half minutes to go. Keep going.
Oh, jeez.
So it sounds like, you know, as the title would imply, deputy clerk, that really you have many of the same responsibilities, although you get to let Karen make the difficult decisions at this point.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you for being here tonight.
You're welcome.
So we will get now to the public hearing.
Mayor, actually,
what-
Deb is Ms. Election. She does all of the actually paperwork up front, shall we say. So she has a pivotal role in election time.
All right, so she's not taking enough credit then.
That's right.
Okay. The next thing that we do have on the agenda is a public hearing. It's the same public hearing that we've been having on our agenda for a while. It has to do with the Gladstone area redevelopment improvements, and it's supposed to be an assessment hearing, and then we would approve the resolution for adoption of the assessment roll. And so, Michael, would you like to explain to us why it is that we're going to continue this once again?
Well, the lucky man.
Yes, Mayor and Council, from my understanding, the most recent correspondence, the SBA loan, everything is in place. We're just working through a minor plating issue with Ramsey County. There's just some very minor items that need to be cleaned up this week. So it's nothing big. So my understanding is that September 12th, everything should be good to go. So that's why tonight, as staff, we're recommending that the City Council, again, open the assessment hearing and then immediately move to continue the hearing for additional testimony at that September 12th date.
And I've received the assurance that this would be the last time that we continue this, and so hopefully that'll be the case. And so, as he said, you know, I'll open the public hearing, but then we'd want to immediately have a motion to continue it to September 12th. So with that, I would open, or reopen really, because we were kind of continuing from last time, reopen the public hearing. Mr. Nephew?
I would like to offer a motion to continue this public hearing until the September meeting.
Second.
So, Mr. Nephew has made a motion that we continue the meeting until September 12th. And it was seconded by Ms. Juneman, I believe. Is there any further discussion of that?
We're going to keep doing this till we get it right.
September 10th, right, or
12th
12th?
is the number I heard.
Yes, the 12th.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, so we will then continue this meeting and hopefully actually have the discussion that we need to have on September 12th. All right, so then the next thing that's on our agenda is organized trash collection system analysis, an update on trash collection proposals and approval of a budget for the next phase of the analysis. And so we have Ms. Finwall with us tonight, who I'm sure has a presentation prepared.
I do. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So I have a presentation for you, and I just want to make sure you can see that on your screens here. I'll call to the presentation on the computer. There we are. So tonight we're discussing our organized trash collection system analysis, and I'll be giving you an update on the trash collection proposals and also discuss budget for the next phase of our analysis. So I wanted to first discuss our request for proposal for citywide residential trash collection. The City Council, as you know, did release that RFP on July 11th, and that called out for a citywide contract, various scenarios for trash collection. And we had that released for over a month, with the due date for that proposal August 19th, which was last Friday. And as of last Friday, at the 4 p.m. deadline, the city did receive 6 responses to the trash collection RFP, and I wanted to highlight those responses. Allied Waste Services, Dick's Sanitation, Highland Sanitation and Recycling, Tennis Sanitation, Walters Recycling and Refuse, and Waste Management. Now I'm going to go into the next phase of our trash collection system analysis. First, our trash hauling working group will give a report to our City Council on August 29th, and that report will include a report on our existing open trash collection system. We'll look at our existing solid waste management ordinance, our refuse licensing requirements, some issues that we're having currently with that open system, and some possible improvements that the city could make to that system. On September 13th and 15th, we'll have 2 closed sessions for our trash hauling working group, who now have in their hands the proposals and are evaluating those proposals. So we will review and analyze the proposals, as well as our consultant, who will be submitting a budget for us, analyzing the cost scenarios on that. Then on September 26th, this is a preliminary date, we are hoping to bring those a summary of the proposals and the trash hauling working group recommendations to the City Council. So you'll have your first look at the proposals that we had received. Then the 2 tracks, again, the existing system, our open hauling system, and a contracted system will come together in November, when the City Council will adopt findings as required by state statute and determine which system best meets the city's trash collection goals. So tonight we wanted to get into the budget for our next phase, which will include the analysis of the proposals, the budget analysis by our consultants, and will bring us through to the November date when we look at the 2 tracks together. And we're recommending that the City Council authorize an additional $20,000 for that budget. And this funding will come from the city's recycling fund, and that is consistent with the goals of reducing waste and increasing recycling. And then also I wanted to let you know that in order to supplement those funds, city staff is recommending, or I should say requesting, assistance from Ramsey County through their Recycling Solid Waste Technical Assistance Program. And we should hear back on that within the next week or so. Yes?
I got a question for you. I received an email about some I received an email about some kind of survey, private survey was done about customer satisfaction on the current system. What was that about?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Copen, the Minnesota chapter of the National Solid Waste Management Association apparently conducted a survey of, I believe it was 400 residential properties in the city.
And what was the result?
I don't have those results, but there was an article in our Maplewood Review going into those results, and I'm sure that the National Solid Waste Management Association, on their website, they probably have that survey in hand with the questions and so forth. That was not submitted to the city or to staff. We didn't have any knowledge of that survey or the results of that.
Well, it'd be nice to have the information passed on, but you know, because that adds to the more information.
Ms. Juniman.
It's fine if we see it, but they couldn't decide what their results were, and there were 2 different versions of percentages, so I don't know how reliable it was.
So I guess I would just further comment that, you know, as pointed out in the article, in the review, you know, their initial take was that they were going to report that there was 90+% people in the city that were satisfied, 96%. But then they reconsidered that, and I believe that the article said because it sounded, you know, too good to be true, and so then they came up with a different number that they figured. And so, you know, they did send out, I think, to all the council members a list of the questions they asked and whatnot. And so with any survey, particularly, well, with any survey, you have to make sure that you ask questions that will elicit the responses on the topic that will actually answer the questions. And so their main question was, are you satisfied with your current trash hauling service? And so if I was asked that question, I would answer yes, because I put my trash out, somebody comes and gets it, and then it's gone. That's what I want to happen when I put my trash out. Now, the question, for example, was not asked, you know, if you could have your trash service be the same or better as it is now and pay 50% less, would you like that? I would answer yes to that also. And so, you know, the fact that they did a survey does not have any direct bearing. It is some information, but it has to be taken for what it is. And it is out there. It was in the newspaper, and so, but it's not part of our information. So, where were we? Ms. Finwell?
So tonight, we are making a recommendation that the City Council adopt the resolution approving a budget not to exceed $20,000 for consultant assistance for the next phase of the trash collection system analysis, and that funding, again, will come from our recycling fund. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there additional questions that anyone has at the moment? So, when they're doing the analysis, those are closed meetings, kind of under the same rule, Mr. Cantrud, that we would close a meeting for labor negotiations and that type of thing?
All right, I think I said I'll let go on and off and then on again. I'm sorry, you're talking about the consideration of what information?
Having to do with the trash hauling working group meeting to kind of analyze the responses from the trash haulers, and which of course contain their bids for the different parts of it and that type of thing.
Whether that's
And
closed
so,
or not?
Well, so they are closed.
Okay,
And,
sorry.
And so I'm just asking basically, would they be closed under the same type of thought where we would be, for example, negotiating contract unions?
Negotiations.
You know, why are they closed? That is the question.
Sure. Under state law, of course, information is public, meetings are public, things of that nature. There are a few limited exceptions where you can close meetings, and most specifically when the city is contemplating entering into contracts and things of that nature, and especially when you've got competing interests out for bid on them.
All right.
So the next phase will actually include the haulers being able to come back and propose alternatives to the idea of we instituting a one hauler system. So that's kind of the flip side of what happens in the second 90 days under the statute.
Okay. Ms. Juneman?
He took care of it.
Mr. Nephew?
Thank you.
A couple things. One, I do think the trash hauling working group, if I understood from our earlier discussions, it's not itself subject to the open meeting law, since it doesn't have a quorum of the council or the ENRC. But obviously we've had all of its meetings in public and broadcast and so forth. The question that I have is that now that these proposals have been received and we're going to be doing this analysis, at what point or do those proposals become public information, or at least when does the winning proposal or the recommended proposal, I don't know if winning is the right term, highest scored, whatever, when does that go beyond the confines of the working group, or does it?
I think I can take that. So those would not become public until the city adopted an actual contract or decided not to go with that type of system.
So sometime after November. But presumably when the city council will be getting the summary, there will be summary information of some kind, because obviously the council can't blindly say, you know, either we're going to keep the current system or we will accept whatever the working group decided was the best proposal without knowing anything about what's in it. So when does that kind of summarized or scored information become public?
September 26th. So we'll have a summary of those proposals and the trash hauling working group's recommendation, and we'll look at you know, all the evaluation criteria, similar to our recycling RFP process.
So that's the magic date for people that are on the edge of their seat wondering what actually would be potentially different from what their bills look like today.
Correct.
Thanks.
So I'm a little confused because one answer was November, and then we're talking about this in September. So
Right, so one would be
yeah.
a matter of where there would be the scoring and the broad outlines indication, but the actual text of the proposals, which have considerable detail from each individual hauler, would not be released to the, would not be provided in response to, say, data practices requests until the RFP process is concluded, either by adopting a contract or by deciding that we're not going to adopt any contract whatsoever.
But the September summary would tell us about costs and that type of thing? Okay. Okay. That was a while ago.
Mr. Mayor, also keeping in mind that the city has to follow the statutory process, and now we are now entering the 90-day negotiation period.
Right.
So we can't, the city council can't make a final decision until after that time period and after you make your findings, and that would be in November sometime.
Okay. I presume in all that exchange you... Oh, you have something else. All right. Go ahead.
Hello?
There you go.
You know,
Lights on, but no one's home.
uh-huh. I'm thinking that that's how this microphone system basically works. Anyway, when the county makes their decision about the Public Entities Recycling Solid Waste Assistance Program, do we know how soon that could be, realistically?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Juneman, these are on case-by-case basis,
Okay.
these requests.
So it isn't like they wait for a date where they look at everything and say that they are actually evaluating along the way?
Correct.
Okay.
And with this particular case, a request to have technical assistance for what was originally termed our organized collection system analysis might be a bit more of a stretch for their purposes. So we have framed it in the purposes of their county goals, which include increasing recycling, increasing their organics, other things that our request for proposal for citywide collection would cover.
Thank you.
Since it's germane to the subject of this process, something that I've been working on, as council members and some members of the public may realize, has been gathering information about bills that people are actually paying currently under our existing system. And I'm going to have to finish a report on the information I have to date to get to staff this week for the workshop that we have coming up, looking at with the current system, how it works. But I do anticipate that later on, at the point when we're going to be comparing what we have versus what we could have, I'll have an interest certainly in getting more information if it's possible. So even though anybody who gets me any more bills, I won't be able, it's too late at this point for me to get them entered into the data that I'm analyzing for next week's meeting workshop. But I would certainly encourage you to drop me an email or drop it off at City Hall and ask it to be put in my box if you haven't already provided me with an example bill and are willing to do so. And I'm making all that, the data from that available to the public, and we'll have more of that info in a week.
You're right this time, Mr. Copeland.
Sean, I got a question. Between the consultants and the staff time, approximately how much money have we spent in this study so far?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Copen, we've spent approximately 80% of the original budget.
Which was $40,000. Okay. Mr. Lannis?
I am, I think I would say that as part of the budget process in the conversation at hand, that we're trying to allocate an additional fund for the continuation of the discovery. And the misinformation that Councilmember Copen alluded to before is both unfortunate and untimely, because I think one of the things that we're trying to do at this point is have an unbiased discussion. And my objection comes to not only that particular survey that he referenced, but the fact that there in and of itself is a comparable invested group sponsoring a survey. And not to say that the Mason-Dixon folks aren't conducting fair surveys. They're asking the questions that were provided to them by those that are paying for the survey. So it's when we set out on this process, we decided that we were going to continue with a fair and open dialogue and not allow outside influence to have a meaningful discussion outside of what it pertains to the residents of our city. And so I think when we talk about the budget, and we talk about a very fair question that Mr. Copen asked, he asked a question is how much of the budget have we spent? There was misinformation about that. We at this point have spent 80% of a $40,000 non-tax resident-based amount. In other words, that came from a very specific fund which is directly tied to our study. And so to say that we're taking taxpayer money and 70, 80,000 or whatever other misinformation is going out there is, again, unfortunate. I would say that as part of this discussion, we're talking about continuing our discovery, and I would advocate, as according to the staff recommendation, that we approve the additional funds so that we can continue this. From my personal chair, from where I sit, I will honestly tell you I am 50-50. Unlike my other colleagues, I think there are some that have made a concerted effort and made it public about where they stand, and I applaud both of and I respect both of their positions. But I will not allow, as I've said at the very beginning, outsiders to influence my vote on this. And I've heard from residents on both sides. So I am interested in continuing the conversation solely for our discovery, and at that point, once the analysis is complete, to be able to make an informed decision.
Ms. Juniman?
Tag teaming on that a little bit. I was really disappointed when I heard about that survey and then when I saw it, because way back at the beginning, if you'll recall, I said the very least we should be able to come out of all this study and investigation would be an improved open hauling system where you could address some of the issues, particularly the environmental issues involved with trash hauling and recycling. And when you have at the base of the industry an organization like this that is willing to go to great extent to warp the information that they're giving to their own customers, it's like, that's really depressing to me, because then wanting to improve your open system says you have to rely on people like this who will say anything and make it up to make it go their way. I don't know how I trust that they would do a decent gentleman's agreement memorandum or whatever. So for whatever that's worth, I hope my statement gets back to them, because I was hoping that we would be hearing accuracy. I remember asking, I won't say gentleman, the man from that organization who had got up before we even started and wanted to talk it over with us, that we were the ones that said it had to be out in the open. And then his organization proceeds to do this. I don't have a whole lot of trust, so if they'd like to find some way to infuse that trust into the remainder of the conversation, I'm open.
Are there any other comments? The one action step that we have to take out of here would be to adopt a resolution that would give us a budget for this next phase. And so, Mr. Nephew?
We'll move the resolution in our packet.
Is there a second?
I seconded it just as you dropped your gavel.
Sorry, yeah, sorry. Mainly because I thought it was my pen. Oh, there it is.
I want to see this. I want to see you right with the gavel.
All right, Mr. Nephew has made a motion. It was seconded by Ms. Juniman to adopt a resolution that approves a budget of $20,000 having to do with the next phase of the trash collection system analysis. Is there further comment or discussion?
Just a quick question.
Yes, Mr. Lanas.
Ms. Vinwell, will you, for the record, tell the public where that additional $20,000 is coming from?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Lannis, the original $40,000 was taken from our Ramsey County SCORE grant. We did receive $77,000 this year for our SCORE grant funding, and we had to put in a request to use that funding for that $40,000. This $20,000 will come from our recycling fund, which is basically where our SCORE grant goes. But it's a fund balance from our recycling fees over the years, and there's funding available for that.
Did any general levy tax dollars, or any of those being used for this continuation of the survey?
No.
Other questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So we have a vote that passes 4-1. And then I would ask the council's indulgence. Matter of fact, I am going to recess our meeting for about 5 minutes so that I have an opportunity to talk with our guests. So we'll be recessed for 5 minutes. It's like I've been collecting pens. Call us back to order for the City Council meeting here for August 22nd. And so we've taken just a quick recess, and now we will go back. And as we talked about earlier in the meeting, that we're going to be a little bit scattered on our agenda. And so we're now going to actually jump to item J2. And this particular item is a resolution where we are being asked as a city to join a national Moments of Remembrance for the 10th anniversary of September 11th. And so the U.S. Senate had passed a resolution on July 22nd, which established a national moment of remembrance on September 11th, 2011, at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, which is intended to memorialize the September 11th attacks. And so we have a rather lengthy resolution, which I believe is fairly self-explanatory. And so I will do my best to read through it, and once we get through it, then the council can have any questions or comments that they would wish to add or ask having to do with it. And so this is the resolution. The City of Maplewood, joining the National Moment of Remembrance of the 10th anniversary of September 11th. Whereas the governing body of the City of Maplewood expresses their support of the United States Senate regarding coming together as a nation and ceasing all work or other activity for a moment of remembrance beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on September 11th, 2011, in honor of the 10th anniversary of the terrorist attacks committed against the United States on September 11th, 2001, and whereas at 8:46 a.m. on September 11th, 2001, hijacked American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the upper portion of the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City, New York, and whereas 17 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., hijacked United Airlines Flight 175 crashed into the South Tower of the World Trade Center, and whereas at 9:37, the west wall of the Pentagon was hit by hijacked American Airlines Flight 77, the impact of which caused immediate and catastrophic damage to the headquarters of the Department of Defense. And whereas at approximately 10 a.m., the passengers and crew of hijacked United Airlines Flight 93 acted heroically to retake control of the airplane and thwart the taking of additional American lives by crashing the airliner in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and in doing so gave their lives to save countless others. And whereas nearly 3,000 innocent civilians were killed in the horrendous attacks on September 11th, 2001, and whereas tens of thousands of individuals narrowly escaped the attacks at the Pentagon and World Trade Center, as witness to this tragedy and forever changed, and whereas countless fire departments, police departments, first responders, governmental officials, workers, emergency medical personnel, and volunteers responded immediately and heroically to those horrific events, and whereas the Fire Department of New York suffered 343 fatalities on September 11th, 2001, the largest loss of life of any emergency response agency in the United States history, and whereas the Port Authority Police Department suffered 37 fatalities in the attacks, the largest loss of life of any police force in the United States history in a single day, and whereas the New York Police Department suffered 23 fatalities as a result of the terrorist attacks, and whereas the impact of that day on public health continues through 2011, as nearly 90,000 people are at risk or suffering from negative health effects as a result of the events of September 11th, 2001, including 14,000 workers and 2,400 community residents who are sick, and tens of thousands of others whose health is being monitored. And whereas 10 years later, the people of the United States and the people around the world continue to mourn the tremendous loss of innocent life on that fateful day. And whereas 10 years later, thousands of men and women in the United States Armed Forces remain in harm's way, defending the United States against those who seek to threaten the United States. And whereas on the 10th anniversary of this tragic day, the thoughts of the people of the United States are with all of the victims of the events of September 11th, 2001, and their families. And whereas the lives of Americans were changed forever on September 11th, 2001, when events threatened the American way of life. And whereas in 2009, Congress and the President joined together to designate September 11th as a National Day of Service and Remembrance under the Serve America Act, which is Public Law 111-13, 123rd statute. I'm screwing up this part, but it's unimportant. Whereas in September 2009 and 2010, President Obama issued Proclamation 8413 and Proclamation 8559 proclaiming September 11th